Hello everyone, my name is Maddie and this is my Marvel comic breakdown. Welcome back, or welcome to my breakdown series where I break down 20 Marvel comics each episode. This is episode 12 and I'm stoked that you're here to share it with me. Stay tuned to the end where we will meet Captain America for the first time. We've got a whole lot of awesome packed into this one. So as we unpack, dissect, and hopefully love 20 more comics, we'll dive into the stories, the characters, and the nitty gritty that makes us love comics so much. If you're new here, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button. Ring the bell so you'll always know when I drop a new video. And if you're not new here, you're the real MVP. So, you ready? Because I'm excited to pull back the curtain on some comic goodness. The next 7 comics are from the Mystic Comics number 9. They were all released in March 1942. The next comic is titled The Gambling Ship. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Pierce Rice. So we've got Vic Duval running a gambling ship offshore where the law can't touch him. And boy, oh boy, is he playing dirty. When a customer like Mr. Atkins loses, they don't just lose a little, they lose big. Like 10 grand big. Atkins isn't the type to take it lying down, so he confronts Duval. But he ends up on the wrong end of a beatdown and takes an unplanned swim, but not so fast. Cue the entrance of the witness, who steps in to save Atkins from drowning. The witness borrows the boat of his unconscious foes, and it's full steam ahead to the rigged roulette wheel. He brawls his way to Duval's office, catching him trying to squeeze 25 grand off of poor Judge Jeffries. A knockout punch sends the witness into dreamland, but it's a ruse. He hops up and teaches Duval's goons a lesson in manners. Tying up the bad guys, the witness drops the mic with a huge reveal. All the games are rigged. Cue the chaos as the gamblers revolt against Duval's crew. With the ship in an uproar, the witness steers it back to the coast, where the cops are waiting to slap on the cuffs. This comic plays with themes of crime and corruption, with the hero representing the common man's fight against unjust systems. It reflects the reader's aspirations to stand up against corruption and makes a strong statement against cheating and dishonesty. The witness embodies the vigilante spirit, enforcing justice where the law can't reach. His cunning and resourcefulness contrast Duval's brute force approach, demonstrating that intellect can prevail over physical power. The next comic is titled Poison Incorporated. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Don Rico. We've got this shady, older criminal mastermind, simply known as the Old One, rallying on a group of misfits to form Poison Incorporated. Their business model is providing a deadly service to those wanting to off their enemies, poison style. Their first client, a construction company owner named John Bradley, wants to silence a newspaper editor accusing him of political bribery. The Old One and his crew hatch a sinister plot, rigging the editor's typewriter with a poisoned needle, and it works. Next morning, the editor is found lifeless, his fingers practically still on the keys. The terror smells a rat when he reads about the editor's untimely death. Paying Bradley a visit, he spooks him into talking about his dealings with Poison Inc. After the terror leaves, the Old One poisons Bradley's wine and kills him for spilling. While the Old One is out taking care of another contract, this time on a guy named Muggsy Murdoch, the terror storms the Poison Inc. headquarters and gives the henchman a good thrashing. He then follows the Old One's trail to Murdoch's place, but the tables turn and he ends up unconscious and dumped in a river. But you can't keep a good hero down. Revitalized by icy water, the terror returns for round 2 at the Poison Inc. hideout. When the cops arrive, the Old One decides he'd rather take a one-way ticket, lighting up a poisoned cigar and fading out on his own terms. This story leans heavily into themes of corruption, deceit, and the struggle between good and evil. It illustrates how the machinations of the wealthy and corrupt can have far-reaching deadly consequences. The Terror, as a character, embodies justice and tenacity, his relentless pursuit, and deduction skills prevailing over the poisonous plots. Ultimately, this story uses the Old One's demise to reiterate the age-old adage, crime doesn't pay. The next comic is titled Mortal Kombat. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Howard James. Picking up from where we left off in episode 11, the demon is all set to drop poor Davy Drew into a pot of boiling trouble. But in swoops the Prince of Good, the virtuous powerhouse who originally put the demon in timeout. Without breaking a sweat, the prince delivers a knockout punch to the demon and sets Davy free. They make their great escape, and the prince uses his power to cause the demon's cave to crumble, burying the villain. Convinced his work here is done, the Prince of Good vanishes once again. But the demon is not that easy to kill. He emerges from the rubble, ready to cause chaos again. He sets his sights on New York City and goes on another rampage. However, the Prince of Good and Davy Drew aren't far behind. Another brawl ensues, with the prince overpowering the demon and sending him crashing through the streets, ending up buried beneath the concrete jungle. Once again, the Prince of Good leaves the scene thinking he's put an end to the demon's terror, but beneath the city streets, the demon lives on, scheming his next escape. This is a classic battle of good versus evil with high stakes and a relentless villain. The demon embodies embodies chaos and destruction, while the Prince of Good and Davy represent order and courage. The story serves as a reminder of the persistence of evil and the continuous battle the forces of good must fight. Yet there's also an element of suspense and uncertainty, leaving us on the edge as we await the demon's inevitable return. But remember, the next comic is titled Longnails. The author and artist are unknown. Jerry Madden, a guy who's done his time and is ready to walk the straight and narrow, walks out of prison with a new lease on life. Thanks to the warden's help, Jerry lands a gig as a security guard for City Trust Co. It's smooth sailing until one day, during lunch, he runs into Longnails Lagaria, a mobster from his old life. Longnails, seeing the opportunity, tries to rope Jerry back into the underworld with a shady bank job. But Jerry's not about that life anymore. He decks Longnails and sends him packing. But Longnails isn't one to forgive and forget. He rallies his gang to retaliate, but our knight in shining armor, the Black Marvel, swoops in just in time to save Jerry. He fends off Longnails and his crew, promising Jerry they won't be a problem anymore. But Longnails isn't done playing dirty. He hatches a plan to frame Jerry for a bank heist. He ambushes Jerry, swipes his uniform, and pulls off the robbery, even going as far as to off the bank manager. Meanwhile, Jerry's held captive at Longnails' hideout. But as if on cue, the Black Marvel storms in and takes on the baddies, holding them until the police can swoop in. Longnails makes his break for it, but the Black Marvel isn't letting him off that easy. He tracks down Longnails, nabbing him before he can make his escape via motorboat. Under pressure, Longnails confesses to his crimes, clearing Jerry's name once and for all. We see the theme of redemption in Jerry Madden's character, a man trying to leave his criminal past behind. The constant interference of his past in the form of Longnails and the resultant framing puts him in a precarious situation. The Black Marvel acts as his guardian angel, demonstrating the superhero trope of protecting the innocent. The plot also serves as a critique of societal attitudes toward ex-convicts, highlighting the difficulties they face in reintegrating into society and the ease with which they can be framed due to their pasts. The next comic is titled Throwback. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Don Rico. Meet Gary Gaunt, a respected criminologist who's earned himself a target on his back thanks to the local mob. One night, while tinkering with a new virus in his lab, he narrowly prevents a bomb from turning his place into a firework display. Almost immediately, his phone rings. It's Lyris, known in the underworld as the Big Guy, pleading for Gaunt's protection from those who are after him. As Gaunt steps out of his place, he's jumped by some mobsters. No biggie though. He wipes the floor with them. Even though he suspects it could be a trap, Gaunt drives off to meet Lyris. Sure enough, his car blows up. But Gaunt's not out of the game yet. He drags himself back home and, in a desperate bid to heal himself, chugs down a formula on his counter before blacking out. Enter Jean Carson, Gray's girlfriend. She drops by only to find a behemoth of a man exiting Gary's place and no sign of Gary. Smelling something fishy, she tails the brute and catches him red-handed stealing a diamond. She tries to stop him, but the brute scurries off, leaving Jean at the crime scene, who also left her purse behind. Now, she's suspect number one. Back at Gary's place, Jean hopes he can help clear her name, while the brute she encountered wreaks havoc in the city. Come sunrise, she's confronted by the same brute returning to Gary's place, but before it can attack, it morphs back into Gary. He tells her about his ingestion of the virus that he'd been working on, which now turns him into a monster each night. Deciding to go on the run, Gary fails to convince Jean to stay behind. Instead, she pledges to help him find a cure. With their day ahead planned out, they begin their quest to return the loot Gary nabbed while in his transformed state. We see a clear exploration of the Jekyll and Hyde trope with a superhero twist. The unintended transformation of Gary Gaunt into a monster due to his self-administered virus provides a parallel to how even well-intended scientific progress can sometimes have destructive consequences. Jean Carson's character offers an emotional anchor in the story, representing loyalty, bravery, and support in the face of adversity. The plot navigates through various themes such as betrayal, self-sacrifice, and redemption, making it a layered and thrilling narrative. The next comic is titled The Mystery of Red Valley. The author and artist are unknown. Mark Todd goes on a little vacay and drops by Red Valley. He's there to chill with his dad's buddy, Old Man Lester. But the local folks say that Lester has turned into a hermit, turning away all visitors. Not one to back down, Mark goes to check on Lester, only to have a door shut in his face. Lester even tries to shoot him, which prompts Mark to switch to his superhero persona, the Blazing Skull, to check out what's up. So apparently Lester's been cooking up a scheme to rob the local bank, using an old mine as his secret path. And he succeeds. Unfortunately, things get dark when he kills a security guard during the robbery. When the authorities arrive, the dying guard spills the beans about Lester. Now, as the Blazing Skull, Mark arrives at Lester's place, ready to throw down with him and his gang. But he gets knocked out and wakes up in a room with Lester. Turns out the real Lester was knocked out too, and it's the mobster killer Brogan pretending to be him. As the authorities rush in to arrest Lester, Brogan unmasks himself and tries to finish off the Blazing Skull. But this hero isn't going down easily. He overpowers Brogan and his thugs and clears Lester's name. Brogan manages to escape, but doesn't get very far. He runs into the mine, where the fight with the Blazing Skull triggers a cave-in, ultimately leading to Brogan's death. Finally, Mark, now back as himself, pays a visit to the real Old Man Lester. We see a significant theme of deception manipulation and impersonation at play, throwing both the hero and the local authorities off track. It underlines the lengths to which villains will go to accomplish their goals. Also, the twist of Brogan impersonating Lester adds an intriguing layer to the story, keeping us on our toes. And finally, Mark's resilience to get to the bottom of the mystery serves as a testament to his heroism. The next comic is titled Horror Mansion. It was written by Stan Lee and illustrated by Mike Sikowski. So we've got this lawyer, Lewis, who convinces his client, Mr. Morton, to take out a hefty life insurance policy at the J.A. Hungle Insurance Company. Then, out of nowhere, Morton receives a note from this guy calling himself Murdoch, claiming that his lawyer, Lewis, is playing him for a fool with this insurance. Murdoch invites Morton to meet him at this super spooky Greywind castle, where Morton starts seeing what he believes are ghosts, causing him to basically have a heart attack. In the midst of all this, the Challenger hears Morton screams and rushes to the castle, but it's too late. Now, suspicious of Murdoch's story, the Challenger decides to keep an eye on the J.A. Hungle Insurance Company. The next day, the Challenger spots Lewis arranging another life insurance policy, this time with wealthy Linda Smythe. Sure enough, Linda gets a note from Murdoch too. This time, the Challenger, having done his homework on the castle and its owner, is ready to jump into action. He fends off Murdoch's attack dog and prevents Murdoch from pushing Linda down the stairs. During the struggle, Murdoch is sent tumbling down the stairs, meeting his end. The Challenger reveals to Linda that Murdoch was, in fact, her lawyer Lewis, who had been scheming to cash in on his client's life insurance policies. We see a recurring theme of deception here. We're reminded of the lengths that some characters go to in their pursuit of ill-gotten wealth. Lewis's plot to exploit his client's trust and cash in on their insurance policies underscores his moral bankruptcy. The Challenger's actions highlight the importance of vigilance and intervention, proving that a hero's work is often more about prevention than it is about after-the-fact justice. Ultimately, the story serves as a critique of unethical practices within the legal and insurance industries. The next 6 comics are in the Mystic Comics number 10. They were all released in May 1942. This is the last issue of the 1940 edition of this comic. The next comic is titled Battling the Underground Factory Fiend. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by John Fort. Nazi Germany is importing more and more prisoners of war into slave labor. Keen Marlowe decides he's going to step in, suiting up as the Destroyer. Walking down the street, he sees Nazi soldiers roughing up some slaves and quickly transforms into his superhero alter ego. He deals with the soldiers in no time flat and guides the slaves to a safe house, promising to return with food and ammo. Meanwhile, over at the German Chancellery, Adolf Hitler is having a chat with his minion, Herr Gruber. Hitler admits that Allied forces have been pretty effective at knocking out Germany's weapons factories, tilting the war in their favor. He needs a solution, and fast. Gruber's got it. Why not build underground factories in German forests? Using slave labor, they'd be able to keep their weapons productions under wraps. Hitler loves it and gives Gruber the green light. The Destroyer's fiancée, Florence, spots Gruber leaving the meeting and quickly reports back to Keen. Keen senses something big is about to happen and decides to tell Gruber as the Destroyer. He follows Gruber to a Nazi base and tries to listen in on their plans, but ends up being spotted. A fight ensues and the Destroyer narrowly escapes, promising Gruber they'll meet again. Keen is still in the dark about the new factory location, so he decides to scour the forests around Berlin. He stumbles upon Gruber overseeing the construction of one of the new underground factories. While snooping, he gives himself away, but he manages to fend off the 2 Nazi soldiers. He discovers a secret passage into the underground construction site and finds himself in the main office, where he urges the workers to revolt against their Nazi oppressors. A battle ensues, with the Destroyer taking on Gruber. He manages to knock Gruber out with a plane propeller, then tells the slaves to evacuate while he sets a fuse to blow up the factory. The Nazis are left tied to trees while the Destroyer and the freed slaves make their escape. Back home, Keen tells Florence all about his successful mission. We see the ongoing conflict between the Destroyer and Nazi forces. There's a clear narrative of resistance against oppression, underscored by Keen's mission to free the slaves and disrupt the Nazis' weapons manufacturing. The plotline explores themes of sacrifice, courage, and the power of collective action against a common enemy. Furthermore, it showcases the Destroyer's heroism, ingenuity, and determination as he uses his wit and strength to overcome obstacles and deal blows to Nazi oppressors. The next comic is titled The Legend of the Headless Executioner. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Jack Alderman. So there's John Trent, fresh off an expedition in India, and he's got an emerald idol he's showing off. He gives the reporters a look at a replica, while the real deal is being shipped to his crib. His assistant, Sidit, is freaking out about some curse that's supposed to come with the idol, but John isn't buying any of that superstitious talk. The same night, John's pal, Larry Scott, is cruising over to check out the idol when a car rushes him off the road. Larry, not one to back down, decides decides to dig deeper, morphing into his superhero alter ego, Father Time. He arrives at John's place just in time to see Sidit and his gang trying to snatch the idol and off John to make the so-called curse look legit. Father Time jumps into action, sending Sidit and his cronies running for the hills. John comes to and is super grateful for Father Time's intervention. Father Time, though, decides to stick around in case any other shenanigans pop off. Inside, as John's unpacking the idol, he's jumped by a giant man who appears to be headless. Just as John's starting to think maybe this curse business is for real, Father Time steps in again, taking down the giant, who turns out to be an Indian warrior aiming to steal the idol. But before they can get any info from him, a rock comes smashing through the window, knocking the giant out cold. Father Time checks outside, but comes up empty. When he gets back, the giant's up and about and lands a heavy blow, knocking Father Time out. When he comes to, John tells him the giant took the idol. Father Time flips the script though, revealing that he actually swiped the real idol during the confusion. John starts beating himself up over being so greedy to keep the idol. Just then, they're ambushed by the giant and Sidit, who demand the real idol. John tells Father Time to just hand it over since he's got a hefty insurance policy on it. But Father Time isn't about to just give up, and goes round 2 with the intruders. Mid-fight, John pulls a gun and drops a bombshell. He was planning to have the jewel stolen all along, so he could cash in on the insurance money. The giant's pretty ticked off at this plot twist and attacks John, but Father Time breaks it up. With John out of the way, Father Time learns from Sidit that the jewel they have is a fake. The real one is safe and sound back in India. Sidit had tricked Trent, knowing he would misuse the jewel due to his greed. This is a classic case of greed and deceit. Trent's desire to profit from the idols blinds him to the dangers and ethical issues, making him an easy target for trickery. Sidit's actions, though sketchy, reveal his awareness of Trent's exploitative intentions. Father Time's role, on the other hand, emphasizes the importance of courage, quick thinking, and a sense of justice. This narrative serves as a cautionary tale against the perils of unchecked greed, while also celebrating the heroic traits embodied by Father Time. The next comic is titled The Demon's Rampage. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Mike Sikowski. So after his beatdown by the Prince of Good, the demon isn't down for the count just yet. He wakes up, breaks free from his underground hidey hole beneath New York, and just picks up where he left off, rampaging across America, leaving nothing but destruction in his wake, and terrorizing any humans who dare to get in his path. While all this chaos is going down, Davy Drew is gearing up to face the demon once more. He hops on a plane to the demon's last known location, the Grand Canyon. This isn't a sightseeing trip though. Davy's going in guns blazing, but even with his magic cloak for protection, he's no match for this ginormous creature. Trying to regroup, Davy ends up being drawn into a secret cave, which turns out to be the demon's crash pad. But Davy isn't about to back down. He squares off against the demon inside the cave, but just when you think things can't get any crazier, an underground river bursts into the cave. Davy hightails it out of there, but the demon is seemingly caught in the deluge. After all the dust, or rather water, settles, Davy can't help but wonder if the demon has finally been taken down for good. This narrative emphasizes the undying resilience of evil, symbolized by the demon, and its perpetual threat to humanity. Despite being defeated, the demon returns stronger, causing greater destruction. This is counteracted by Davy's determination and bravery, though he is seemingly less powerful. The unexpected flood can be seen as nature's intervention, symbolizing a greater force in play that can vanquish evil. However, the ambiguity of the demon's fate leaves an open-ended question about the persistence of evil, keeping us on our toes for the next time. The next comic is titled Story Conference. The author and artist are unknown. It doesn't have a designated universe. This is about the thrill-filled life of Red Skeleton, a comic book writer hustling at Crimely Comics. His boss, Stanley D, get it, is breathing down his neck. Gotta churn out those epic storylines, you know? And of course, the deadline is closing in. It's a race against time. Poor Red doesn't make it out of the office unscathed. He conks himself on the way out. Ouch. Adding salt to the wound, he arrives home only to discover he's lost his keys. Double ouch. Resorting to some nifty lockpicking, he finally manages to breach his fortress. But here comes Dina Drayson, an aspiring assistant turned snazzy daily press photographer. A classic jump scare welcome for Red. Red's puzzling over the next big hit, and Dina's got an offer, an invite to a showgirl's photo shoot, guaranteeing a sight for sore eyes. And that's when the light bulb moment strikes. Murder, mystery, showgirls. It's got all the makings of a gripping narrative. Red's all in, sketching out a story where the hero must unravel the murder of a young girl. But reality gives fiction a run for its money when a real-life showgirl ends up murdered. Adding to the chaos, Red, with his peculiar fortune, uncovers the culprits, the jewel thieves Tony Conville and Big Sutton. But the stakes just got higher. Captured and on the brink of doom, Dina saves the day. Packing some serious firepower and along with Red's clumsy maneuvers, maneuvers, they manage to round up the bad guys for the authorities. Now imagine the irony when Red pitches the roller coaster of a tale to Stanley D, only to be met with a too unbelievable remark. Sometimes life is stranger than fiction, or in Red's case, more unbelievable than a comic plot. It brilliantly captures the creative process, the chaos of life, and the surprises it can throw at us. The characters are multi-dimensional, from Red's quick thinking to Deanna's unexpected bravery. The real-life events have a fascinating way of influencing Red's story ideas, providing a meta-commentary on the interplay between life and art. The next comic is titled The Death List of Mr. Z. It was written by Otto Binder and illustrated by Don Rico. This story plunges us into the ruthless world of Bill Murdoch and his gang. Their newest partner in crime is the enigmatic Mr. Z. He has an offer they can't refuse, offering those with fat insurance policies for a major payday. Their next target is Gregory McCall, a man sitting on a cool $200K life insurance policy. With a plan as devious as their intentions, they break into McCall's home, coercing him into signing his policy over to Bill, now moonlighting as John Jones. McCall's family is brutally silenced, shot down in cold blood, all for money. A chilling testament to the extent of human greed. But every night has its star, and ours is none other than the Terror, drawn by the sound of gunfire. Morphing into his fearsome form, he leaps into action. Although the hero puts up a solid fight, one mobster escapes with all the important paperwork, leading to John Jones successfully claiming McCall's insurance money. Mr. Z, unfazed by the Terror's intervention, has already moved on to their next mark. The next target is none other than the Terror. Unknowingly walking into the Lion's Den, Bull, Mr. Z, and their gang encounter a transformed Terror. Overpowered and bound for a fiery end, it seems like it's game over for the hero. But little do they know, fire fuels the Terror, giving him the strength to flip the script. Rejuvenated and stronger than ever, the Terror lets loose on the mobsters, effortlessly taking them down. But the grand finale happens when unmasking Mr. Z to reveal the man behind the malevolence, W.C. Tuttle, the insurance company owner himself. And as sirens wail in the distance, the hero slips into the shadows, leaving justice to take its course. It's a gritty narrative, exploring the dark recesses of human greed and the lengths some will go to for money. The villain Bull, his gang, and Mr. Z personify this unscrumptious pursuit. However, it's balanced with the heroic actions of the Terror, displaying strength, resilience, and cunningness. The plot's twist, Mr. Z's true identity, is an exceptional commentary on corruption within systems of power. The next comic is titled The Lizard. The author and artist are unknown. This is a story of Lon the Lizard Draga. Fresh out of prison, he's supposed to be on the straight and narrow, but seems like Lizard's got a whole other plan in mind. A deadly grudge against those who put him behind bars. Equipped with a bow and arrow and a cold heart, Lon's first stop on his vendetta spree is Commissioner Golden. An arrow to the back and one down. But Lon's not playing a subtle game here. With an unexpected twist, he turns a machine gun on innocent bystanders, adding chaos to his trail of vengeance. This horrific scene is witnessed by the Challenger, who takes a solemn vow to bring the Lizard to justice. Switching tactics, the Lizard turns to explosives, targeting District Attorney Peters' home. The resulting explosion claims another victim for Lon's revenge list, but the Challenger is hot on his trail. Piecing together the Lizard's plot in his civilian identity as Will Waring, he discovers Lieutenant Pat Quinn is next on the hit list. Trying to warn Quinn, the Challenger is brushed off. Quinn's convinced Draga's a changed man. Undeterred, the Challenger sticks to Quinn's tail, and just as well, because when night falls and Quinn is ambushed by Draga in the park, the hero is right there to save the day. The duel of a lifetime ensues, leading them to a frozen pond. The ice cracks, plunging both into the icy depths. But in a twist of fate, it is the Challenger who emerges victorious, pulling Draga to his watery end. And with the gratitude of a saved Quinn, the saga concludes. It's a raw exploration of vengeance, with Lon the Lizard Draga's relentless pursuit to exact his own twisted justice. His tactics, from archery, gunning down innocents, to explosives, underscore the lengths of his cruelty. On the other hand, we have the Challenger's unwavering commitment to justice, refusing to step down even in the face of disbelief from Quinn. The climactic duel showcases the risks heroes take in their pursuit of justice, a thrilling, action-packed narrative that has us pondering the delicate balance between revenge and justice. The next 7 comics are from the Captain America Comics #1. They were all released in December 1940. The next comic is titled Meet Captain America. It was written by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, and illustrated by Jack Kirby and Al Lederman. We're diving into a major historical throwback. Young men of America are joining the military, gearing up to fight against the threat of Nazi spies, the 5th columnists, embedded within their own ranks. 2 such 5th columnists, masquerading in American uniforms, bring disaster by blowing up a local munitions factory. Cut to Washington, D.C. A couple of army generals have had a meeting with none other than President Franklin D. Roosevelt. They brief him on the concerning fact that even his most confidential orders are reaching Germany, but they've got a plan, led by J. Arthur Grover, the FBI's top dog. As a cheeky reference, the president suggests they could do with a superhero like the Human Torch. The team heads to a covert lab hidden within an old curio shop, where they're met by a seemingly harmless old woman. Inside the lab, they've got a frail young man waiting. The old woman turns out to be X-13, one of Grover's elite agents. The guy is injected with a mysterious serum that transforms him into a specimen of peak human physique, and just like that, Captain America is born. Tasked with the mission to shield American shores from Nazi spies and saboteurs. But, as we all know, no origin story is complete without a dash of tragedy. A spy among the officials, working for the Gestapo, shoots the director, obliterates the serum, and wounds Grover. It's chaos, but Cap, newly christened and determined, leaps into action, and we see Cap in action for the first time, overcoming the traitor. With his iconic red, white, and blue attire, Captain America sets off on his mission, fighting Nazi plots and earning fame as the public ponders the identity of the new defender. Now, fast forward to U.S. Army's Camp Lehigh, where Bucky Barnes, the camp's mascot, admires Captain America's exploits. Unbeknownst to him, his buddy, Private Steve Rogers, is none other than the Cap himself. One day, Bucky stumbles upon Steve's secret. With the cat out of the bag, Steve decides to make Bucky his sidekick, and together, they set out to thwart Nazi threats. It's a power-packed narrative that ingeniously ties in with the historical backdrop of World War II, bringing forth themes of patriotism and heroism. The creation of Captain America, a symbol of hope and resilience, counters the very real threat of Nazi spies. The plot adds a layer of intrigue with secret identities and espionage, even as it emphasizes loyalty and friendship through the Bucky-Steve dynamic. It's a classic Golden Age comics, complete with a super serum, high-stakes missions, and the rise of a patriotic hero. According to the Young Allies Comics 70th Anniversary Special Number 1, several Golden Age adventures, including the origin story of Captain America, are interpreted as fictionalized versions of the real events in the universe. However, due to the influence of the Code Comics Authority, certain elements of these stories were changed or removed in later retellings, such as explicit deaths, blood, and injections. For instance, the secret program that gave Steve Rogers his abilities through Professor Reinstein's serum is unnamed in the original, but revealed to be Operation Rebirth in Tales of Suspense number 63. Similarly, various code names and real names of characters involved in the program were changed or omitted. Characters such as Lieutenant Cynthia Glass and Undersecretary Sims were replaced or adapted, and the presence of a Nazi spy within the operation was altered. FBI Director Grover, in addition, during the adaptation, and in imitation of the real FBI Director Edgar J. Hoover, replaced Dr. Anderson's role in the narrative. The manner in which Steve Rogers receives the super serum has also been revised over time. In the original, it's an injection, whereas in Tales of Suspense number 63, it's an oral compound, and in Captain America number 109, Rogers is bombarded by Vita rays. Captain America number 255 reconciles these different versions, stating that all three methods were used. A more detailed version of Captain America's origin is detailed in the Adventures of Captain America Limited series. Initially deemed non-canonical due to discrepancies with Earth 616 established lore, the series is later recognized as canonical as Marvel handbooks started referencing events from the series. The next comic is titled Case Number 2. It was written and illustrated by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. Let's dive into a peculiar spectacle that unfolds in this narrative, where a dime scores you a ticket to a psychic show featuring Sando, also known as Von Krantz, and his sidekick Omar. The stage is set and the drama intensifies as Sando gazes deeply into Omar's eyes, fishing for predictions about future events. You know, the usual psychic stuff. On one such occasion, Omar foresees a disastrous event at Fort Bix, and voila! Just like that, Fort Bix experiences a massive explosion, sending shockwaves of disbelief through the protagonists Steve and Bucky. So Steve and Bucky decide to check out the psychic duo for themselves. As if on cue, Omar foretells another catastrophe, the collapse of Hilltown Bridge. Steve and Bucky bolt to prevent the catastrophe, but alas, they arrive just a tad too late. Undeterred, the dynamic duo head back to the theater, determined to crack this mystery. Things take a turn when they hear a woman's desperate cry for help. Captain America is instantly on alert, following the sound to find Betsy Ross being held captive by some gun-wielding thugs. Sando reveals he's the mastermind Von Krantz, aiming to create a domino effect of disasters to destroy the US's morale. Betsy tells all, saying Omar is nothing more than a puppet in Von Krantz's nefarious plan. Just when things are heating up, Von Krantz attempts to blow the place up. Quick-thinking Bucky flings the bomb out the window, and together with Captain America, they defeat Von Krantz. As they prepare to leave, Betsy attempts to thank them. In pure Cap fashion, he simply wishes her a good night and makes his exit. This storyline pushes the boundaries of the predictable superhero narrative, intertwining psychic predictions, a secret villain, and high-stake battles. It's not just about the action, though. It's a narrative on trust, intuition, and the unwavering spirit of heroism that defines characters like Steve and Bucky. The comic book Tales of Suspense number 64 features an updated version of case number 2, now titled Among Us Wreckers Dwell. This is a non-canonical reiteration. The setting for this story is altered. Fort Bix, the original location for case number 2, is transformed into Camp Lehigh. The next story is titled Captain America and the Soldier's Soup. It was written and illustrated by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. This is a text story. Picture a calm fall night where Private Rogers, the beloved Cap, is snapped awake at the army camp by the unusual silence outside. He stumbles upon an unconscious sentry, and sensing something's up, he morphs into his Captain America persona to explore further. And then he bumps into the villains of the day, Slinky and the Crusher, hatching a plot to poison the camp's soup, because nothing says evil plot like sabotaging soup. It's not all smooth sailing, though. Captain goes toe-to-toe with them, and there's a moment where the Crusher's strength throws him off his game. But this is Captain America we're talking about. With a swift, strategic move, he slips from the Crusher's clutches. At the same time, Bucky, Cap's biggest fanboy, comes out of nowhere to join the fray. He tackles Slinky, and the distraction gives Cap the window he needs to KO both of them. When the soldiers roll up, they're in for quite a surprise. There's even talk of Captain America having been there. The next morning, the newspapers are all about the foiled sabotage attempt. At the army post, the colonel breaks the news. The sentry is okay, just knocked out, and they've squeezed a confession from the bad guys. He heaps praises to the elusive Captain America, even hinting that he might be one of them. As the colonel finishes his speech, we see a knowing glance exchanged between Private Rogers and Bucky, a little secret shared between two heroes. This storyline weaves ordinary with the extraordinary. It's about balancing dual identities and the challenges that come with it. But also, it's a testament to quick thinking, bravery, and camaraderie, reminding us of what makes Captain America and Bucky such compelling characters. The next comic is titled The Chessboard of Death. It was written and illustrated by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. We're in a shady corner of the city where Rathcone, a chess enthusiast, plays a game with pieces that look suspiciously like actual people. He drops a bombshell on his minions. It's lights out for Admiral Perkins, who's giving a lecture that night. Meanwhile, Steve manages to drag a not-so-keen Bucky to this said lecture. But the curtains part and a horrifying sight. Admiral Perkins, lifeless. Instinctively, Steve and Bucky change in their superhero gear and hit the ground running to find the killer. As Bucky stealthily navigates the shadowy alleys, he catches the eye of number 5, a sinister character lurking in the darkness. A struggle ensues, but Captain America swoops in just in time to save Bucky. Despite his silence, Cap manages to persuade number 5 to spill the beans. Just then, a bullet pierces the Nazi agent. Cap can only watch as number 5 breathes his last, while fending off a storm of bullets himself. They spot 3 men, but the chase is futile, so the duo heads back to Camp Lehigh. Unfazed, Rathcone carries on with his deadly chess game, setting his sights on General Ellsworth. That evening, Steve and Bucky find themselves on special duty at the general's hut, only to discover him lifeless. The next day, newspapers flash news of yet another brutal murder within the nation's military command. Rathcone, now gunning for Captain America and Bucky, sends Strangler and her chameleon after them. Later, Strangler tricks Bucky into believing he can solve the killings. Bucky walks right into a trap set in a decrepit building, and he meets Rathcone and his eerie chessboard. Attempting to escape, Bucky is tripped up by Rathcone, who plans to kill both him and Cap together. Discovering a note left by Bucky, Captain America locates Rathcone's lair. An intense battle follows, ending with Rathcone and his gang defeated by these heroes. Cap calls in the FBI, and the criminals are apprehended. Later, Major Fields expresses to Steve his curiosity about Captain America's real identity. This story highlights the cunning and cruelty of villains like Rathcone, while underlining the bravery and quick thinking of Captain America and Bucky. But it also uncovers layers of deception and high stakes involved in their world. The next comic is titled The Riddle of the Red Skull. It was written by Ed Herron and illustrated by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. A slightly unnerved Steve and Bucky leave Major Croy at his place after he receives a chilling card from the infamous Red Skull. Unfazed, the Major dismisses the Red Skull as a myth and retreats into his house. But guess who's coming for dinner? The Red Skull himself, with those hypnotic eyes, sends Major Croy into a trance, commanding him to look until you see death. Upon hearing the shocking news, Captain America decides it's time for some solo action, leaving Bucky behind. However, it's actually Bucky who stumbles upon the Red Skull's lair by accident, but he's caught by Slug, one of Red Skull's goons, who's clueless about Bucky's identity as Cap's sidekick. In no time, Cap locates the lair and all hell breaks loose. Amidst the chaos, the sneaky Red Skull escapes through a secret exit. Deciding they've done all they can, the dynamic duo heads back to Camp Lehigh. The next day, George Maxson of the Maxim Aircraft Corporation pops in to watch his latest aircraft undergo undergo Army testing. But disaster strikes. The plane bursts into flames mid-flight and crashes, killing all on board. Steve is appalled when Maxon shows more regret for the plane's failure than the tragic loss of life. Fast forward to General Charles Manor, who receives a sinister package from the Red Skull. As the general unwraps the surprise, Red Skull shows up uninvited and kills him. Hearing the commotion, Mildred Manor storms into the room, gun in hand, but the Red Skull knocks her down. Hearing the scuffle, Captain America barrels into the room like a force of nature. In the ensuing fight, Cap knocks off the Red Skull's mask to reveal George Maxon. It turns out Maxon has been offing his victims with hypodermic needles. Things take a turn for the worse as Maxon accidentally rolls over his own lethal needle. Bucky questions why Cap didn't prevent Maxon's suicide, but Cap isn't in the mood for chit-chat. He notifies the FBI, who discover a note indicating that Maxon had been playing for Team Hitler. This story not only keeps us on the edge of our seats, but also unveils the true face of villainy, showing that it often hides in plain sight. But hey, I mean, that's just my take on it. The Red Skull character featured in this issue of the Captain America comics is not the same antagonist that we usually link with Captain America. The more notorious Red Skull, known as Schmidt, doesn't truly appear until Captain America Comics number 7. Despite this, retcon has established that Schmidt was also covertly involved in the events of this issue. The next comic is titled Murder Ltd. It was written by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby and illustrated by Jack Kirby. This is an enthralling tale where Hurricane, known in his mortal form as Mike Curry, visits Coast City, currently plagued by a series of chilling murders. Looking for a ride, he hails a taxi, and while the oblivious driver keeps his eyes on the road, Hurricane pulls out a pair of silver wings, attaching them to the cab. Suddenly, the taxi bolts forward, turning into a blazing comet. The driver, understandably shaken, quickly drops Hurricane off. Just then, a gun-toting figure appears from behind the hero. Hurricane confronts the henchman, saying he wants an audience with the notorious Piggy Peroni. Piggy makes a grand entrance, gun aimed at Mike. Introducing himself as Mike Curry, he expresses his interest in joining Piggy's crew. Piggy teams him up with Dum Dum, instructing them to take out Tom O'Leary. Outraged by this ruthless command, Mike channels his inner Hurricane, leading to an intense showdown. Post-battle, Hurricane gives Piggy a chilling prophecy of an endless punishment due to his blood-soaked hands. Cut to Police Commissioner Regan, facing the wrath of impatient Prosecutor Nelson, who's clamoring for Piggy's arrest. Suddenly, Piggy makes a dramatic entrance, sporting wings. Although the cops try to make him spill the beans, it appears Hurricane has already had a heart-to-heart with Piggy. With this new intel, Hurricane heads to Vanderpoint Estate, crashing a masquerade ball to meet Paul Satan. Satan, dressed as the devil, is accompanied by his henchman, Trigger, oblivious to his boss's real identity as Hurricane's cousin, Pluto. As Hurricane observes, Pluto spikes the punch with a lethal dose. To blend in, Hurricane morphs into an angel disguise, but alas, Pluto sees right through his celestial disguise, and a battle of epic proportions ensues. Back at the DA's office, Piggy outs Paul Satan as the murder honcho of the murder ring. Nelson wastes no time tracking down Satan's estate, only to find Hurricane in the aftermath of the battle. Pluto is nowhere to be found, but Trigger Bates is dead. Exhausted, Hurricane excuses himself. In a blur, he zooms past the officers and vanishes, leaving the cops utterly baffled. This thrilling tale offers a unique take on disguise and deception, highlighting the complexities of dual identities. Hurricane is later retconned as being Mercury from the Red Raven comics number 1, and the Eternal Makari, and Pluto as being the Deviant Crow. The next comic is titled Stories from the Dark Ages. It was written by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby and illustrated by Jack Kirby. This story involves the ancient wilds of 50,000 BCE, following the story of Ak, the last of the Shaggy ones, and Tuck. In a land untouched by time, Ak signals Tuck to come over. As they sit amidst the wilderness, Ak starts recounting a tragic tale. This is the story of Phadion and Raya, a couple from a far-off tribe, left ashore with their infant by their kinsfolk. Their fate takes a terrible turn when they encounter Gala, the woolly, horned creature. In the ensuing battle, Phadion loses his life, leaving Rhea alone with their child. But the violent episode is far from over. Kag, the lion wolf, lured by the scent of fresh blood, emerges from the forest, posing a deadly threat to the grieving Rhea. However, destiny intervenes. Ak, having witnessed these events, saves Rhea and her child, leading them to the safety of a secluded cave. There, he begins to revere the survivors, offering them protection and care. One day, while Ak ventures out to hunt for food, another predator, Gru the lion, discovers the cave and tragically ends Rhea's life. Ak returns from his storytelling only to be dying of old age, but not before he reveals to Tuck a life-altering truth. Tuck was the infant who came ashore with Phadion and Rhea. Moved by his newfound identity, Tuck decides to venture beyond the rock country he's always known. During his journey, he encounters the hostile Gorex, but luck is on his side. A stranger named Tanir intervenes and saves him from the Gorex, marking the beginning of a new partnership. This tale intertwines elements of survival, sacrifice, and destiny, set against the raw backdrop of prehistoric times. It's very interesting to read it. And just like that, we finished another deep dive into our world of comics. That's a wrap on episode 12. We've unpacked some epic storylines, met some intriguing characters, and walked through the twists and turns of our favorite universes. It's been really fun. I can't say how grateful I am for all your support. Every like, comment, and share means the world. Remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and click on the bell icon to stay notified about future videos, as I'm trying to figure out my new schedule due to school. But before I sign off, I want to hear from you. What did you think of the comics we covered today? Did you have a favorite? Or maybe there's a comic that you can't wait to see featured in the future? Drop your thoughts down in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, keep reading, and remember, every page turn is a new adventure waiting to unfold. Catch you in the next one.